to escape them. They implored Orva to reconsider his actions, reminding him that those who take their own life are denied. In traitor-blessed realms, the Pitra's words struck a chord within Orva. He began to see the error of his ways, and his wrath slowly subsided. The ancestor's plea had touched his heart, and he realized that destroying the world would not bring him peace or honor. With a newfound sense of balance, Orva restrained his mind from the sinful act, choosing instead to let go of his anger and restore harmony to the three worlds. In the realm of ancient India, where the sacred Vedas whispered secrets to those attuned to their wisdom, a tale unfolded like a tapestry of intrigue and devotion. The sage Vasishtha, renowned for his profound understanding of the cosmos, sat in contemplative silence, listening intently, as the Gandharva shared with him a story that would shake the very foundations of existence. As the narrative flowed, Vasishtha's eyes sparkled with rapt attention, his mind afire with the tale of Arv, a Brahmana, consumed by righteous anger. The Pitra's ancestral spirits, revered for their wisdom and guidance, had spoken to Arva, urging him to renounce his vow of destruction born from the ashes of his mother's suffering, for it was said that when the Kshatriyas, those wielders of power, had ravaged the prey clan, including unborn children, leaving the women in a state of desperation, Arva's wrath had been kindled like a fire fed by dry wood. Arva stood firm, his convictions unyielding. "I will not abandon my vow," he declared to the Pitras, "for if I do, my rage will consume me, and I will become incapable of fulfilling the threefold purpose of life, dharma, artha, and kama. Kings, too, must sometimes unleash their wrath to maintain order and protect the innocent. If I fail to act, the wicked will flourish, and the worlds will suffer." His words dripped with passion, his heart afire with a sense of justice. A Pitra's wise and compassionate counsel Arva to cast his fiery wrath into the waters, for it was said that the universe itself was born from water. "Let this fire consume the greatest scene," they urged him thus. "Your vow will be fulfilled, and the worlds will remain untouched." Vasishtha's voice wove a spell of enchantment as he recounted Arva's decision to heed their words with a resolute heart. Arva cast his wrath into the abode of Varuna, the god of the Essene, and lo, the fire that had threatened to engulf the worlds transformed into Vedavamukha, a mighty horse had its mouth agape as it devoured the waters of the greatest scene. As Vasishtha spoke these words, his eyes shone with a deep understanding, and he addressed Parasara, the wise sage who dwelled in the higher realms. "Blessed be you, Parasara, for your insight into the mysteries of the cosmos. Is unparalleled your wisdom guides us." All thus, the tale of Arva's wrath came to an end, a testament to the transformative power of devotion and the boundless wisdom that lies within the ancient traditions of India. As Vasishtha finished his narrative, the air was heavy with the scent of sandalwood and the whispers of the Vedas. In the sacred land of ancient India, a tale of devotion and self-control unfolded like a majestic sunrise. The illustrious Vasishtha, a sage renowned for his wisdom and compassion, stood before Parasara, the son of Saktrai, who had taken a vow to perform a grand Rakshasa sacrifice. This ritual was meant to appease the gods and bring peace to the world. As Parasara began to prepare for the sacrifice, he ignited 3 blazing fires, and like a 4th fire, his own energy blazed within him. The entire firmament seemed to radiate with an otherworldly light as he poured libations of clarified butter into the fires. Vasishtha and the other rishis watched in awe, regarding Parasara as a second sun shining brightly with his inner strength. Meanwhile, Pulastia, one of the great rishis, arrived on the scene, accompanied by Atrikretu and others who were drawn to the spectacle. They were all deeply troubled by the slaughter of innocent Rakshasas, creatures that knew nothing of Saktrai's doom. Pulastia approached Parasara with a gentle, if firm tone, speaking words of wisdom and compassion. "O child, is this truly your desire, to slay even the most innocent of beings? Does it bring you joy to destroy those who know not of your father's fate?" Pulastia asked, his voice like a soothing balm on Parasara's troubled soul. "As a Brahmana devoted to asceticism, you should strive for peace and harmony, not destruction." And Parasara listened intently as Pulastia continued to speak words of truth and wisdom. The great Rishi reminded him that Saktrai had brought about his own demise through the power of his curse. Viswamitra, it seemed, was merely a blind instrument in the matter. Both Saktrai and Kaumashapada now resided in the heavens, enjoying great happiness. Moved by Pulastia's words, Parasara began to see the error of his ways.
He realized that he had been an instrument of destruction rather than a bringer of peace. With a newfound sense of understanding, he brought the sacrifice to an end, casting the fire into the deep woods on the north of the Himerican. So the great Monite Perazura abandoned his vow, choosing instead to walk the path of compassion and self-control. The fire that had once blazed with such intensity was now extinguished, but its legacy lived on, a testament to the transformative power of wisdom, compassion, and devotion. To this day, it is said that the very woods where the fire was cast still consume wretches as trees and stones in all seasons, a reminder of the enduring impact of Parasura's choice.
In the forest of Chakra, the king, Kalmashapada, driven by the curse of Rishisektra, wandered with his wife in search of sustenance. His eyes wild with hunger, he stumbled upon a secluded clearing where a Brahmana and his wife were engaged in intimate moments. Alarmed, they fled, but the king's wrath drove him to seize the Brahmana. The queen, pleading for her husband's release, fell on her knees before the monarch. "O great king," she implored, "you are known for your virtues and devotion to morality. I beg of you, do not commit this heinous act. My time has come, and I yearn for my husband's companionship. Spare us both and grant us our desire." But the king, consumed by his own desires, ignored her pleas and devoured the Brahmana. Like a beast, the queen's tears turned to flames, burning everything in their path, as she cursed the king. "You wicked wretch, you shall meet your end when you seek to unite with my wife, and our son, born from that union, will be the one to perpetuate your lineage." She spoke. The queen entered the blazing fire, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Rishisektra, renowned for his spiritual insight, was aware of the curse and its consequences. Years later, when King Kalmashapada finally broke free from the curse, he approached his wife Medayadatai at the time of her season, but she sent him away, whispering words that struck fear into his heart. The king's memories returned, and with them his regret for the atrocities committed under the influence of the curse. Terrified by the prospect of meeting his demise, he sought to undo the damage by appointing Vasishta to beget a son upon his queen, and so in an attempt to salvage what was left of his lineage, King Kalmashapada entrusted the revered Rishi with the task of securing his family's future. As Arjuna walked alongside the Gandharva on the banks of the Bhagirathi River, he couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder at the world around him. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves rustling softly, and the river's crystal clear waters sparkled like 1,000 diamonds in the sunlight. Arjuna's thoughts were elsewhere, however, as he posed a question to the Gandharva. "O Gandharva, you are acquainted with everything. Tell us, which feat a knowing Brahmana is worthy to be appointed as our priest?" The Gandharva, his eyes twinkling with ancient wisdom, replied, "There is in these woods a shrine of the name of Akarkeka. Damya, the younger brother of Devala, is engaged there in ascetic penances. Appoint him if he desire your priest." Arjuna's face lit up with excitement as he listened to the Gandharva's words. He turned to his companions and exclaimed, "This is the one we need. Let us go to Akarkeka at once." Seize. They made their way to the shrine. Arjuna couldn't wait to meet Damya and learn from him. When they arrived, he was overjoyed to see the Brahmana's serene countenance and the peaceful atmosphere that surrounded him. Arjuna presented his whip on fire to the Gandharva as a token of gratitude, and with great ceremony he handed it over along with other gifts of Pandavas, then bid farewell to the Gandharva and set off towards Akarkeka. Once more, as they approached the shrine, Damya emerged from his meditation, his eyes shining with a deep inner light. He welcomed the Pandavas warmly, offering them wild fruits and edible roots as gifts. Arjuna and his brothers were deeply impressed by Damya's humility and kindness. As they spent more time with Damya, the Pandavas felt their spirits lift. They saw in him a powerful protector, a wise guide who could lead them back to their rightful place on the throne of Hastinapura. And so with Damya as their priest, they regarded their sovereignty and kingdom as already regained. They also felt confident that they would win the hand of the beautiful Princess of Panchala in the upcoming Swayamvara. Damya, beholding the Pandavas' intelligence, strength, and perseverance, regarded them as already restored to their former glory through their own accomplishments. He saw in them a potential that rivaled even the gods themselves as he blessed them with his words. The Pandavas felt a sense of purpose and determination wash over them. With Damya by their side, they set off towards the Swayamvara, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Brahmanas men. In the bustling land of Panchala, a grand celebration was underway. The illustrious Yajnisna
also known as Drupada, had announced his daughter Draupadi Swayamvara, a magnificent event where she would choose her husband from among the noble princes gathered to participate. News of this grand occasion had spread far and wide, drawing kings and princes from various lands to compete for the hand of the beautiful Draupadias, the Pandavas, Yudhishthira, them Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadeva journeyed through the countryside with their mother Kunti. They chanced upon a group of Brahmanas on the road. These wise men, who were Brahmachars, or devoted students, so the Vedas, beheld the Pandavas with reverence. They approached Yudhishthira and asked about his family's destination. Yudhishthira, ever respectful to the learned Brahmanas, explained that they were on their way to Panchala to attend Draupadi Swayamvara. The Brahmanas, eager to participate in the festivities, invited the Pandavas to join them. They spoke of the grandeur of Drupada's abode and the incredible wealth that would be bestowed upon the chosen husbandess. They conversed. The Brahmanas described Draupadi as a paragon of beauty, her eyes shining like lotus petals, her features flawless, and her youth radiating intelligence. They spoke of her brother Drishtadyumna, who was born from the blazing fire with natural armor and arms, making him a formidable warrior. Of Brahmanas also mentioned that many kings and princes would be attending the Swayamvara, each eager to win Draupadi's hand through their prowess in battle and their generosity. The competition would be fierce, but the rewards would be great, not only for the chosen husband, but also for those who participated in the festivities. The Brahmanas' words sparked Yudhishthira's interest, and he proposed that his brothers and their mother join them on the journey to Panchala. Together they could witness the grandeur of Drupada's Swayamvara and enjoy the many wonders it would bring. As they set off towards Panchala, the air was filled with excitement and anticipation for the magnificent event that awaited them. The road ahead was long, but the prospect of beholding Draupadi's beauty and participating in the festivities drew the Pandavas and their companions forward. They traveled alongside the Brahmanas, sharing stories and songs. As they made their way to the land of Panchala, the Swayamvara loomed before them, a celebration that would be remembered for generations to come. As they journeyed on the sounds of music and laughter carried on the wind, the heralds announcing the arrival of each noble prince. In a distant land, the Pandavas, led by Arjuna, set out on a journey to the kingdom of Panchala, ruled by King Drupada. As they traveled through lush forests and serene lakes, they were met with respect and admiration from the people. They encountered the wise Rishi Dwapena, who was known for his purity of soul and celeste nature, greeted them warmly and bid them farewell. After a brief conversation, after parting ways with the Rishi, the Pandavas continued their journey to Drupada's capital city. They arrived in the kingdom and took up residence in a humble potter's house, adopting the Brahmanical profession and living an ascetic life. Unbeknownst to them, they had been recognized as heroes by some, but no one dared to approach them. Meanwhile, King Yajnesna, Arjuna's father-in-law, was eager to see his daughter married off to Karatype Arjuna. However, he kept his intentions hidden from everyone. Drupada, too, had a secret desire to bestow his daughter Krishna on Arjuna to test the young warrior's prowess. The king commissioned a sturdy bow that could only be bent by Arjuna. He then set up a mark in the sky accessible only through a matchine, and declared that whoever could string the bow and shoot the mark would win his daughter's hand. As word of the Swayamvara spread, kings from far-off lands flocked to Drupada's capital, eager to vie for Krishna's hand. The city was abuzz with excitement as the citizens prepared for the grand event. The monarchs, adorned in their finest attire and fragrant pastivalos, took their seats on the platforms surrounding the amphitheater. The Pandavas, too, entered the grand arena, blending in with the Brahmanas and other dignitaries. They marveled at the opulence surrounding them, the beautifully decorated mansions, the resplendent canopies, and the majestic trumpets that filled the air. The atmosphere was electric as the performers entertained the gathering with their skills. As the 16th day of the Swayamvara arrived, Krishna emerged from her chambers radiating beauty and charm. She was accompanied by her brother Drishtadyumna, who addressed the assembly with a voice that thundered like the clouds. He declared the terms of the challenge. Whoever could shoot the mark in the sky using the 5 sharpened arrows would win his sister's hand. The stage was set for an epic showdown as the assembled kings and nobles prepared to face the ultimate test of their strength, courage, and skill. Little did they know that Arjuna, the Pandava prince, was about to prove himself in a way that would change the course of his story forever. The sun beat down upon the grounds of Hastinapur as the Swayamvara ceremony was about to begin. Yamna, the sister of Panda's sons, stood tall and proud, her eyes scanning the sea of faces. Before her, she had been betrothed to one of these mighty warriors. But on this day, she would choose her own husband as she gazed out at the assembly. Yama's heart swelled with emotion. There in front of her stood Durjadhana and his brothers, Durvizhad, Durmilkat, and Dashbharat Harshana. Their faces were set in determined lines, their eyes burning with ambition. Beside them stood Karna, his sword at the ready, a fire splint in his eye. But they were not alone. Innumerable other kings had come to Hastinapur, each one more powerful and majestic than the last second. Isavala, Vrysika, and Vryadvala, sons of the king Gandhara, stood tall among them. Aswathaman and Bhoja, renowned for their skill with arms, had also arrived, adorned in every ornament that signified their wealth and statues. As Yama's eyes wandered across the crowd, she saw Virata, his two sons, Sankat and Adara. By his side, behind them, stood Vardakshmai Sazarma Sinevindu Sukti with his two sons, Sanama and Savarka Sakshakra, Sukumara, Vrika, Satyadratai, and many others. Each one was a mighty warrior celebrated throughout the world for their prowess in battle. Yama's gaze finally came to rest on Vasudeva Krisha, his eyes shining with kindness and compassion. He stood among them all, yet he seemed apart from them, as if connected to something greater than mere human ambition. And beside him stood Jarasan, the powerful king of Magadha, his face the studi in contrasts. Fierce and gentle at once seized Yama, took in the sea of faces before her. She felt a sense of awe wash over her. These men were not just warriors. They were kings, each one with their own kingdom to rule and protect, and yet they had all come here to this place to compete. For her hand, the Swayamvara ceremony was about to begin, and Yama knew that she would have to make a choice. Soon she took a deep breath, steeling herself for the task ahead among these mighty warriors who would shoot the mark and win her heart. Only time would tell. The sun was setting over the kingdom of Panchala, casting a warm orange glow over the sprawling amphitheater where the Swayamvara ceremony was about to take place. The air was electric with anticipation as the young princes from across the land gathered to compete for the hand of Draupadi, the beautiful daughter of King Drupada. The princes were a sight to behold, their jewels and ornaments glittering in the fading light as they stood proudly on their royal seats. They had all come to prove themselves worthy of marrying the lovely Draupadi, each one convinced that he was the most accomplished, the most skilled, and the most deserving of her hand. As the ceremony began, the princes rose from their seats, their faces flushed with excitement and pride. Krishna shall be mine, they exclaimed in unison, their voices echoing through the amphitheater like a chorus of thunder. The Kshatriyas, each one desirous of winning Draupadi's hand, looked like the celestial gods gathered around Uma, the daughter of the king of mountains. The great heroes of the land had all come to witness this spectacle. The Rudras and Adityas, the Vasas and twin Aswins, the Swatas and Marutas, Kubra with Ima walking ahead, the Dedias and Saparnas, the great Nagas and celestial Rishis, the Gaikas and Charanas had all assembled to watch this grand display of strength and valor. Among them was Haliuda Valadeva, the wise elder brother of Krisha, Janardana, Krisha himself, the prince from Dwarka, who had come to support his friends in Tandaka. The chief of the Vrishite tribe, the principal Gandharvas with Apsaras, had also arrived. Their music and dance filling the air as they watched the spectacle unfold. As the princes began to compete for Draupadi's hand, it became clear that none of them could string the bow of extraordinary stiffness that stood before them. One by one they tried and failed. Their strength spent, their crowns and garlands loosened from their persons. They panted for breath, their ambition cooled as they lay motionless on the ground. It was then that Karna, the son of Surya, rose to the challenge. Like a flame of fire he strode forward and grasped the bow, his strength and skill evident in every move. The Pandavas watched with bated breath as Karna strung the bow and placed the arrows on the string. But when Draupadi saw Karna, she lovely rejected him, saying that she would not choose a Sota, a warrior of lower caste, for her lord. Karna loved in vexation and threw aside the bow, his pride wounded, but his spirit unbroken. As the competition continued, many more princes tried, and the assembly hall was abuzz with excitement and anticipation as the monarchs, each determined to string the mighty bow, took their turns. But one by one they failed to meet the challenge, their strength and prowess No match for the task at hand, the Brahmanas seated in the crowd watched with a mixture of dismay and skepticism, whispering among themselves about the foolishness of this young Partha Arjuna, who dared to attempt what even the greatest warriors had failed to do. As the last monarch gave up, a murmur of discontent swept through the assembly. Some Brahmanas urged caution, warning that Arjuna's actions would bring shame and ridicule upon them all. This stripling is but a boy, they said. He has no experience in arms, nor the strength to wield this mighty bow. Others countered with words of encouragement, recalling the feats of great Brahmanas who had accomplished impossible tasks through their devotion, and tapis among these voices was that of Agastya, who had once drunk the fathomless Asindra with his Brahma energy. Why doubt Arjuna's abilities? They asked, is he not like Rama, son of Jamadagni, who defeated all the Kshatriyas in battle? Let us have faith in this young warrior, and see what he can achieve. The debate raged on, with some Brahmanas urging caution, while others cheered Arjuna won us. The discussion reached its peak. Arjuna himself stepped forward, his eyes fixed upon the bow. He walked around it, bending his head in reverence to Isana, the Lord of all beings, and remembering Krishna's words of encouragement with the quiet confidence that belied his youth, he picked up the bow and with a swift motion strung it. In the twinkling of an eye, the assembly erupted into a deafening roar as Arjuna took aim and shot the mark, his arrow piercing the target with unerring precision. The gods themselves showered celestial flowers upon Arjuna's head, while thousands of Brahmanas waved their upper garments in joy. Drupada, that great warrior king, was filled with delight and offered to assist Arjuna if the need arose. The music swelled and the bards sang his praises. Krishna approached Arjuna, a garland of flowers on his brow and a white robe flowing behind him, and in that moment it seemed as though the very heavens had smiled upon this young warrior, for he had won not only the admiration of the assembly, but also the hand of Draupadi, the princess who had been the prize at stake all along. With the crowd still cheering, Arjuna and his new bride left the amphitheatre, surrounded by the reverent Brahmanas who had witnessed this incredible feat, and as they departed it seemed that the very fate of their kingdom hung in them. In the grand assembly hall where the Swayamvara was being held, a sense of unease settled over the gathered monarchs. Drupada, the king who had invited them to compete for his daughter's hand in marriage, had unexpectedly chosen the Brahmana as the winner. The assembled kings, their faces darkening with anger, began to murmur among themselves, "What is this?" They exclaimed, "Does Drupada think we are mere straw? He plants the tree of invitation and then cuts it down. When it bears fruit, we will not stand for such an insult. Let us slay him along with his son." The king's voices rose in a crescendo of indignation as they drew their bows and arrows. Drupada, realizing the danger that threatened him, turned to the Brahmanas for protection. But just then two mighty warriors emerged from the crowd, Bhima and Arjuna, the sons of Pandu, their eyes flashing with determination. They stood ready to face the angry monarch. Bhima, his muscles rippling beneath his skin like a thunderstorm, tore up a massive tree and used it as a club to defend himself. The sound of its crashing through the air sent shivers down the spines of the monarchs who faltered in their charge. Arjuna, meanwhile, stood tall, his bow at the ready, prepared to face whatever lay ahead. Krishna, watching from the side lanes with an air of quiet satisfaction, recognized his cousins and friends among the crowd. He turned to his brother Balarama and whispered, "Behold, I see Arjuna, that mighty warrior who draws a bow 4 cubits long, and there standing beside him is Bhima, tearing up trees like a lion. The youth with eyes like lotus petals who left the amphitheatre earlier is Yudhishthira, and those two youths like Kartikeya himself are surely the sons of the twin Aswins." Balarama's eyes widened in amazement as he took in the scene before them. "By the gods," he breathed, "I see that our father's sister Pritha and the Kaurava princes have indeed escaped the flames of the house of Black." The two brothers exchanged a look of joy and relief, their faces reflecting the happiness they felt at knowing that their family had been spared. As the monarchs hesitated, unsure of what to do next, Krishna's words hung in the air like a challenge. Would they slay Drupada and his son, or would they retreat in defeat? Only time would tell. The sun was setting over the land as Arjuna and Bhima, two of the Pandava brothers, stood tall amidst the gathering of Brahmanas. The air was electric with anticipation as they prepared to face the Kshatriya warriors who had come to claim the hand of Draupadi in marriage. The Brahmanas shook their deer skins and water pots made of coconut shells. They exclaimed, "Fear not, we will fight for you." Arjuna smiled, his eyes shining with confidence as he addressed them. "Stand aside, my friends," he said. "I shall face These warriors, alone with the mighty bow in hand, Arjuna stood immobile as a mountain, accompanied by Bhima. The Kshatriya warriors, led by Duryodhana and Karna, son of Shariya, charged forward with fierce cries. But Arjuna was undaunted, his arrows flying swift and true like snakes slithering through the grass. Karna, with his mighty energy, rushed towards Arjuna, but the latter drew his bow and pierced him with sharp arrows. Karna stumbled only to recover and attack Arjuna with renewed vigor. The two warriors clashed in a flurry of steel and sparks, each seeking to vanquish the other. Their battle raged on, each blow landing with precision, until finally Karna hesitated, acknowledging the invincibility of Brahma energy. Meanwhile, Bhima and Shalya, the mighty king of Magadha, engaged in a fierce duel, their fists and knees clashing like granite masses. As the fight continued, the monarchs began to realize that these Brahmanas were no ordinary warriors. They were strong, skilled, and seemingly invincible. The Kshatriyas hesitated, unsure of how to proceed, until Krishna, who had been watching from afar, intervened. Behold, he said, as Bhima hurled Shalya to a distance without harming him, these Brahmanas are indeed extraordinary warriors who can match their strength and skill. The monarchs were amazed, their doubts dispelled by the display of prowess they had witnessed. Krishna's words calmed the Kshatriyas, who retreated from the fray, acknowledging that Brahmanas, however offending, should be protected. As the dust settled, Bhima and Arjuna emerged from the throne, their faces battered but unbroken like the sun and moon emerging from the clouds. Their mother Kunti had been anxiously waiting for them to return, her mind filled with fears of what might have befallen her sons. But as they finally entered their home, accompanied by a body of Brahmanas, she saw that they were safe, their strength and courage unbroken. In the bustling streets of Hastinapura, the 5 Pandava brothers, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakila, and Sahadeva, had just returned to their humble abode after a long day, exhausted from their journey. They eagerly approached their mother Kunti, who was sitting within the room, unaware of her son's arrival. As the brothers entered, they proudly presented Yajnesni, the beautiful daughter of King Drupada, as the alms they had obtained that day. Kunti, still unaware of their ruse, smiled and said, "Enjoy ye all what ye have obtained." But as soon as she beheld Krishna, her eyes widened in surprise, and she exclaimed, "Oh, what have I said?" Fearing sin and embarrassment, she quickly took the hand of Yajnesni and approached Yudhishthira. Mother Kunti asked, "How can we extricate ourselves from this situation? How can Draupadi's honor be preserved? And how can our actions not lead to sin?" Yudhishthira, wise beyond his years, reflected for a moment before responding. He consoled his mother, saying, "Brothers, let us not forget that we are the sons of Pandu. We must think of the future and the well-being of our kingdom." Arjuna, ever the voice of reason, spoke up. "Next, O king, do not make me a participant in sin. Your behest is not conformable to virtue. That is the path followed by the sinful," he urged Yudhishthira to wed first, then Bhima, and so on, ensuring that Draupadi's honor was preserved. The Pandavas looked at one another, their eyes filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They knew that this decision would shape their future and the fate of their kingdom. Yudhishthira, understanding the desires of his brothers, revealed a plan to marry Draupadi as a common wife for all 5 of them. As they deliberated, Krishna, accompanied by his cousin Baladeva, arrived at the potter's abode. The Pandavas were overjoyed to see their friend and confidant who had been sent to guide them in times of need. Krishna smiled knowingly, aware that he had discovered the true identities of the 5 brothers. As the evening drew to a close, Krishna and Baladeva touched the feet of Yudhishthira and Kunti, expressing their devotion and respect. The Pandavas, now free from their disguise, were overjoyed to be reunited with their friend. With a newfound sense of purpose, they vowed to continue their journey together, guided by Krishna's wisdom and blessings. As the night wore on, Krishna and Baladeva bid farewell to the Pandavas. As the sun began to set on the bustling streets of the potter's abode, the Kuru princes Bhima and Arjuna made their way back home. They were accompanied by their brothers Nakila and Sahadeva, the illustrious twins who had spent the day distributing alms in the town. Unbeknownst to them, Drishadhyamna, the prince of Panchala, had been secretly following them, hiding himself within the potter's house. As the evening wore on, the Pandavas returned to their humble abode, where their mother Kunti was waiting for them. She smiled warmly as they approached, her eyes shining with love and pride. "My sons," she said, "take a portion of this food and offer it to the gods. Give some to the Brahmanas who have come to visit us today, and feed those who are hungry. Divide the rest into 2 halves, one for Bhima, our strong and brave warrior, and the other into 6 portions for each of your princes, listened attentively to their mother's instructions, their faces filled with devotion as they set about completing her tasks. They ate heartily from the food prepared by Krisha, their eyes shining with gratitude as they savored each bite as night began to fall. Sahadeva spread out a bit of kusa, grass on the ground, and the princes lay down, each one claiming his own deerskin as a pillow. Krishna, who had been watching over them with loving care, lay along the line of their feet, her heart filled with joy and contentment. Though she was lying among the sons of Pandu like a nether pillow, she felt no sense of disquiet or disrespect towards these mighty warriors. As they settled into sleep, their conversations began to flow freely, each one sharing tales of their adventures on celestial cars, armed with divine weapons and majestic elephants. The Prince Trishtadyumna, who had been hiding in the shadows, listened intently from his secret vantage point. He watched as Krisha smiled and laughed with her brothers, her eyes sparkling like stars in the night sky. The Panchala, Prince's heart, swelled with emotion as he beheld this scene of family, love, and devotion. As morning broke over the potters abode, Trishtadyumna emerged from his hiding place, his face set with determination. He hastened to report to King Drupada all that he had witnessed during the night, the loving interactions between Krishna and her brothers, the conversations of the princes as they lay on their bed of kusa. Brass. Meanwhile, King Drupada was pacing anxiously in his palace, his mind consumed by worry and uncertainty. He had been grieving for his daughter, not knowing where she had gone or who might have taken her away. "Tell me, my son," he implored. In the bustling streets of a small town, a majestic sight unfolded. Trishtadyumna, a prince from the Lunar dynasty, approached his father with a beaming smile on his face. He recounted the tale of Krishna's arrival and how he had won over the youth who had strung the mighty bow and brought down the mart, set high in the skies. Trishtadyumna spoke. His words painted vivid images in the mind of King Drupada. He envisioned a young hero with large red eyes, attired in deerskin, resembling a celestial being in beauty. The prince described how this youth had been surrounded by Brahmanas who offered him homage for his incredible feat, like a thunder-wielding Indra, standing among the celestials, and rishis. The youth had begun to exert his prowess. The assembled monarchs, unable to bear the sight of their adversary, rose up in wrath and advanced towards battle. But another hero emerged, tearing up a massive tree and rushing at the concourse of kings like Yama himself, smiting down living creatures. The king stood motionless, awestruck by the 2 heroes who resembled the sun and the moon. The couple of heroes, accompanied by Krishna, left the amphitheater. They made their way to the abode of a potter in the suburbs of the town. Inside, a lady sat like a flame of fire, surrounded by 3 other men, each radiating an air of warmth and energy. The heroes approached her, paid homage to her feet, and invited Krishna to do the same. A woman with kindness shining from her eyes welcomed the couple and their young friend as they spent time together. She distributed alms obtained during their eleemosynary visits among those present. After sharing what little remained, she took a final bite herself, savoring each morsel as if it were a precious gift. As night began to fall, the group settled down for rest, with Krishna lying along the line of their feet as their nether pillow, the bed made of kusa, breasts, and deerskins creaked softly beneath them. In hushed tones they engaged in deep conversations, their words echoing through the stillness like black clouds. The talk of these heroes hinted at their noble nature, a testament to their Kshatriya lineage. Without a doubt, they were bulls among warriors, discussing military subjects with passion and conviction. It seemed that their hope had finally been fulfilled, for it was said that the sons of Kunti had escaped the conflagration of the house of Lacking. Drupada's joy knew no bounds. As he listened to his son's words, he sent a priest to investigate the identity of these mysterious heroes, and when they arrived at the potter's abode, they were met with applause and praise. The king's message was delivered, asking them to reveal their family. And as the sun began to set on the kingdom of Hastinapura, Vaisampayana's words echoed through the air, carrying a message from King Drupada. The messenger arrived at the palace, his eyes shining with urgency, and announced that the king had prepared a grand feast in honor of the upcoming nuptials between Krisha and Kisha. "Come thither after finishing your daily rites," he said, his voice dripping with importance. "Krisha's wedding will take place. Their delay." Not a messenger's words were like a clarion call, stirring the Kuras from their reverie. Vaisampayana continued, "Then those bulls among the Kuras," dismissing the priest and causing Kuntai and Krishna to ride together on one of those cars adorned with golden lotuses themselves ascended those splendid vehicles and proceeded towards Drupada's place. As they made their way through the winding roads, the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the soft chirping of birds. The cuirass rode in regal splendor, their faces set with determination, their hearts filled with hope. Kuntai, the queen, sat beside Krishna, her eyes shining with a mixture of joy and trepidation. She knew that this union would seal the fate of her family, but she also saw it as an opportunity for peace and prosperity. Meanwhile, King Drupada was busy preparing for the arrival of his guests. He had ordered a vast collection of articles to be gathered, each one carefully chosen to reflect the status and prestige of the cuirass: fruits, sanctified garlands, coats of mail, shields, carpets, kind seeds. Every item was meticulously arranged in a grand display of hospitality. The king's ministers were busy overseeing the preparations, their faces set with concentration as the cuirass arrived at Drupada's palace. They were greeted by the warm smiles of the king and his attendants. Kuntai and Krishna were led to the inner apartments, where they were welcomed with open arms by the ladies of the household. The queen was treated like royalty, her every need attended to with care and devotion. The cuirass, meanwhile, were ushered into a grand hall filled with the finest seats, each one carefully arranged according to their status. They sat down with ease, their broad shoulders and long hanging arms a testament to their strength and agility as they took their seats. Well-dressed servants, male and female, brought forth a feast fit for kings. Viands worthy of royalty served on gold and silver plate. As the cuirass dined with relish, their faces filled with joy and contentment. After the meal was over, they began to observe the various utensils of war that Drupada had collected. Their eyes widened in interest as they beheld the shields, swords, and scimitars on display. King Drupada's. In the midst of the bustling city of Panchala, King Drupada, a just and fair ruler, sat with Prince Yudhishthira, the eldest son of Kuntai. The king's eyes shone with curiosity as he inquired about the true nature of the Pandavas' identity. Were they Brahmins, celestial beings disguising themselves as mortals, or indeed Kshatriyas, princes born to rule? The king's words hung in the air like a challenge, and Yudhishthira, his voice steady and calm, replied with conviction, "We are Kshatriyas, O king." He said, "Sons of the illustrious Pandu, we have come seeking your daughter's hand in marriage for Arjuna, our brother. We have won her amidst a gathering of monarchs, and she has been transferred from one lake to another, like a lotus blooming anew." The king's eyes rolled in ecstasy. As he listened, his delight palpably as the moments passed. King Drupada composed himself, and with great effort replied to Yudhishthira. He asked about their escape from the burning palace of Laka, and Yudhishthira recounted every detail, telling the tale of their narrow escape. The king's expression turned grave as he censured Dhritarashtra, that ruler of men who had set the flames ablaze. King Drupada then vowed to restore Yudhishthira to his rightful throne, and with a sense of relief the Pandavas were welcomed into his court. They would reside there, treated with respect by King Ijnasna. The king's sons, including Drashtadyumna, approached Yudhishthira and with great ceremony proposed that Arjuna take Drupada's daughter in marriage. Yudhishthira, however, surprised the assembly by announcing his own intention to marry. King Drupada offered him a choice to marry his daughter himself or give her to Krishna in marriage. Yudhishthira smiled and explained their family tradition, that any jewel obtained would be shared equally among them. "All this is our rule of conduct," he said. "We do not know the subtleties of morality, but we follow the path trodden by the illustrious ones of former ages. My tongue never liars and untruth. My heart turns away from sin. My mother commands it, and I approve it." King Drupada was taken aback, unsure how to respond to this unconventional proposal. He suggested that Yudhishthira, Kuntai, and Drashtadyumna settle the matter among themselves, promising to act according to their decision. The following day, as night descended upon Panchala, the Pandavas gathered in private council with King Drupada's son Dhris. The sun was setting over the tranquil landscape, casting a warm orange glow over the gathering of esteemed guests. The Pandavas and King Drupada of Panchala stood before Rishi Krishna Dwapana, their revered teacher and guide, with deep respect and reverence. As they saluted him, Krishna's eyes twinkled with kindness as he returned their greetings and inquired about their well-being. With a wave of his hand, the illustrious sage invited all present to sit on luxurious golden carpets, and soon the assembly was seated in comfort. King Drupada Ever the curious one turned to Vesa with a question that had been weighing on his mind. How can one woman be the wife of many men without being defiled by sin? The Risha's eyes sparkled as he replied, "This practice, my king, is indeed opposed to usage, and the Vedas. Yet I wish to hear each of your opinions on this matter." Drupada spoke first, his voice firm with conviction. "In my heart, I believe this practice is sinful, for it goes against both tradition and sacred texts. The wife should never commit a sin." He declared. Trishadyama, the brave warrior, son of Drupada, nodded in agreement. "How can our elder brother approach the wife of his younger brother? Morality is ever supple, and we cannot say what is right or wrong." Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava, stepped forward with a gentle smile. "My heart never inclines towards sin," he said, "and I have heard that in ancient times a virtuous woman named Jeta married 7 rishis, and an ascetic's daughter united herself with 10 brothers who bore the same name of Prakshitas." He paused, his eyes shining with sincerity. "Our mother has commanded us to enjoy Draupadi as we would anything obtained as alms. I believe this act is virtuous." Their wise and compassionate mother nodded in agreement. "I fear that my words may be untruthful," she said, her voice trembling slightly. When all had spoken, Vesa rose from his seat, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "My dear king," he said to Drupada, "let us speak privately about this matter. I shall reveal the truth behind this ancient practice and why it is considered eternal virtues." The assembly waited for the return of Vesa and Drupada. The air was filled with anticipation. Finally, the Rishi emerged from a private apartment, his face aglow with wisdom. "My king," he said to Drupada, "come, let us speak in secret about this sacred practice." And so the stage was set for a profound revelation that would change their understanding of the ancient tradition forever. In days of yore, a grand sacrifice was being performed in the forest of Naimisha by the Celestials. Among them was Yama, the son of Vivaswat, who had taken on the role of slaying animals. For the ritual, however, during this period, he did not kill a single human being, and death itself seemed to be suspended from the world. As a result, the population of humans began to grow exponentially. The Celestials, led by Samasakra, Varuna, Kavra, and others, approached Prajapati, the creator of the universe, with concern about this rapid increase in human numbers. They explained that without distinction between mortals and immortals, they felt threatened. Prajapati reassured them that Yama's role was temporary, and when he finished his work at the sacrifice, death would resume its natural course. The Celestials returned to the grand sacrifice, where they noticed a golden lotus being carried by the current of the Bhagirathi river. Indra, the chief of the Celestials, followed the lotus and discovered a woman weeping on the banks of the river. She was washing her face in the stream, and her tears were transforming into golden lotuses. Indra approached the woman and asked for her identity and reason for weeping. The woman, with a hint of mystery, requested that Indra follow her as she led the way to reveal what she wept for. As they walked, Indra soon came upon a youth playing dis on a throne atop one of the peaks of Himavat. The youth was none other than Mahadeva, the god of the gods. Indra's pride and arrogance took over, and he boasted about being the lord of the universe. However, Mahadeva merely smiled at Indra's outburst, and with a single glance paralyzed the chief of the Celestials, rendering him immobile. Mahadeva then instructed the woman to bring Indra closer, so that the god could be dealt with accordingly. As soon as Indra was touched by the woman, he fell down on the earth, his limbs weakened by fear. Mahadeva told Indra not to repeat such behavior and commanded him to remove a huge stone from the cave in the breast of him. Indra, upon removing the stone, found the cave where 4 others resembling himself were trapped. Seeing their plight, Sakra was filled with grief and exclaimed, "Shall I be like these?" Mahadeva, enraged by Indra's folly, cursed him to enter the cave without delay, stating that he had insulted him. Indra, trembling with fear, addressed Mahadeva as Baba, the overseer of the infinite universe. Mahadeva smiled and told Indra that those who possess a disposition like his would never receive his grace. He instructed Indra to lie in a grand hall of King Drupada's palace. A majestic celebration was underway. The air was filled with the sweet scent of sandalwood and the soft chatter of guests. The king, resplendent in his fiery, beamed with pride as he gazed upon his daughter Krishna, adorned with precious jewels and pearls, her dark hair stilled in intricate braids. As the moon entered the constellation Pusha, a most auspicious day had dawned. Vesa, the illustrious sage, stood before King Yudhishthira. son of Pandu, and declared this day as a day of great joy. Take Krisha's hand as your own first among your brothers. The king's eyes sparkled with excitement as he nodded in agreement the preparations for the wedding had been meticulous. King Drupada had spared no expense in adorning his palace with lotuses, lilies, and precious stones that shone like stars in the firmament. The yard was a sea of colorful silks and perfumed robes, while the guests, including Brahmanas, ministers, and citizens, had taken their seats, according to their ranks as the princes of the Kuru line, attired in their finest garments, entered the hall. They seemed like mighty bulls ready to storm into a cup, and their priest Dalmia, well versed in the Vedas, ignited the sacred fire and poured libations of clarified butter into its flames with due mantras. He united Yudhishthira with Krishna, and as they walked around the fire, their hands clasped together, the union was complete, and Dalmia took his leave, leaving the newlyweds to begin their life together. But this was not a simple marriage, for each of the Pandava brothers would take Krishna's hand in turn, aided by the priest. The celestial Rishi had foretold a wondrous thing, that Krishna would regain her virginity every day after each marriage. As the weddings came to an end, King Drupada showered his sons-in-law with gifts. He presented them with 100 golden standard cars, each drawn by 4 steeds with golden bridles, 100 elephants adorned with auspicious marks on their temples and faces, 100 female servants clad in costly robes and ornaments, and much wealth, including many precious garments. The king of the Luna race, Ejnesna, had also given generously to his son-in-law. Each of the Pandava brothers received great wealth and costly robes, as well as many ornaments of splendor, with their new wives by their side and their coffers overflowing with riches. The sons of Pandu passed their days in joy and happiness, like Indras themselves, in the capital of King Drupada. In the kingdom of Drupada, a sense of relief and joy filled the air as King Drupada's fears began to dissipate. His alliance with the Pandavas had brought about a new era of peace and prosperity. The ladies of the royal household, led by Kunti, welcomed Krishna into their midst. They approached her with reverence, introducing themselves and touching her feet in a gesture of respect. Krishna, resplendent in her red silk attire adorned with the auspicious thread on her wrists, stood before Kunti with joined palms. Her mother-in-law Pritha Kunti couldn't help but be drawn to Krishna's beauty and charm with affection shining in her eyes. Pritha blessed her daughter-in-law, wishing for her happiness and prosperity. Though unto the husband as Sakshai unto Indra, Pritha said, Swaha unto Vivavas Rolanai, unto Samadamayantai, unto Nala, Adra, unto Vaisravana Parantatai, unto Vaisishta Lakshmi, unto Narayana. May you be the mother of long-lived and heroic children, and may all that brings joy be yours. Let luck and prosperity follow you always, and may your days be filled with devotion to your husbands, entertaining guests, and honoring those who come to your door. As Pritha's words hung in the air, Krisha listened intently, her eyes shining with gratitude. The atmosphere was filled with warmth and love, as if the very presence of these noble women had brought a sense of peace and harmony to the kingdom. And the days that followed, Krisha continued to bring joy and happiness to the Pandavas. She sent them gifts from afar, gold ornaments set with pearls and lapis lazuli, costly robes woven in distant lands, beautiful blankets and soft hides. The vessels she sent were adorned with gems and diamonds, a testament to her wealth and generosity. Krishna also gifted the Pandavas with female servants brought from various countries, each one a paragon of beauty, youth, and accomplishments. She gave them well-trained elephants from Madra, horses in costly harnesses, cars drawn by majestic steeds, and coins of pure gold by the crores. The slayer of Madhu had indeed sent his blessings to the Pandavas. Yudhishthira, the just king, was overjoyed at these gifts. He accepted them with great gratitude, eager to please Govinda, who had sent them as a token of his love and affection. As he received each gift, Yudhishthira's heart swelled with happiness, knowing that Krishna's generosity would bring prosperity and peace to their kingdom for generations to come. In this way, the Pandavas were blessed by Krishna's kindness and generosity. Their lives were filled with joy and abundance, as if the very presence. The news of Draupada's marriage to the sons of Pandu spread like wildfire among the monarchs who had attended her self-coy ceremony. Spies from each kingdom brought back tales of the handsome young woman who had chosen Arjuna, the renowned warrior, as her lord. Bhima The mighty warrior was also described in awe-inspiring terms. His strength and fearlessness were said to be unmatched. The monarchs were astonished to learn that the Pandavas had assumed the guise of peaceful Brahmanas, and that Kunti and all her sons had miraculously survived the burning house of lac. They wondered at the strange twist of fate that had brought the Pandavas back from the brink of death. As they pondered this news, their anger turned towards Bhishma and Dhritarashtra, whom they blamed for the cruel scheme devised by Kurakani. Meanwhile, Duryodhana's face fell as he heard that Draupadi had chosen Arjuna as her lord, accompanied by his brothers Aswatthama, Sakana, Karna, and Kripa. He set out for Hastinapura with a heavy heart. Dasesana whispered to him if Arjuna hadn't disguised himself as a Brahmana, he wouldn't have won. Draupadi's hand, fate is supreme. Our efforts are in vain. The brothers entered the city of Hastinapura with sorrowful hearts. Their pride wounded us. They arrived at the palace. They were struck by the sight of the Pandavas who had escaped the burning house, and all allied themselves with Drupada. Prishtadyumna, Sikandin, and the other sons of Drupada seemed invincible in battle. The brothers' fear and despair deepened. Vidyura, however, was overjoyed by the news that Draupadi had chosen the Pandavas as her lords. He approached Dhritarashtra and exclaimed, "The Kurus are prospering due to good fortune." Dhritarashtra's face lit up with joy, thinking that his eldest son, Duryodhana, had been chosen by Drupada's daughter. He ordered ornaments for Draupadi and instructed that she and Duryodhana be brought back to Hastinapura in grand procession. But Vidyura soon corrected the king, revealing that Draupadi had actually chosen the Pandavas as her lords, and that they were alive and at peace with Drupada's relatives and friends. Dhritarashtra's understanding of his son's situation began to shift. He realized that having Drupada as an ally would be a boon in times of prosperity or adversity. Vidyura's words, however, only seemed to fuel the anger of Duryodhana, Karna, and Dasesana. They approached Dhritarashtra, who was now alone, and rebuked him. The sun had just begun to set over Hastinapura, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling streets. Dhritarashtra, the blind king of the Kurus, sat on his throne surrounded by his trusted advisors and sons. He turned to Vidyura, his wise and loyal brother, who stood beside him, but made sure not to reveal any hint of his true intentions. Vidyura, oblivious to the king's secret, thoughts continued to engage in a lively conversation with Dhritarashtra about the Pandavas, praising their virtues and good deeds. Dhritarashtra applauded along with Vidyura, all the while concealing his own plans from his brother's keen eye. As soon as Vidyura departed, the king turned to his sons, Duryodhana and Karna. "My dear Sayodhana," Dhritarashtra said, addressing his eldest son, "I wish to discuss a matter of great importance with you. What have you devised to counter the Pandavas' growing influence?" Duryodhana's eyes lit up with excitement as he began to outline his plans. "Father, we can use skilled Brahmins to sow discord among the Pandavas," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "Or we can bribe King Drupada and his sons to abandon Yudhishthira's cause. We could even persuade them to settle in Panchala, away from Hastinapura." Duryodhana's words were laced with cunning and ambition. Karna, the son of Radha, nodded in agreement, adding his own suggestions to Duryodhana's plans. "We can also use spies to make the Pandavas jealous of one another," he said. "Or we can incite Krisha against her husbands. She is May suitors, and this would not be difficult." Karna's words dripped with malice. Dhritarashtra listened intently, his mind racing with the possibilities. He turned to Duryodhana once more. "Tell me, my son, what do you think is the most effective plan?" Duryodhana smiled confidently, knowing that he had his father's ear. "Father, I believe we should focus on weakening the Pandavas' strongest member, Bhima," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "If we can eliminate him, they will lose their strength and energy. Without Bhima, Arjuna is nothing but a shadow of himself." Duryodhana's words sent shivers down Karna's spine. The conversation continued. Dhritarashtra weighed each plan carefully, his mind torn between his loyalty to his sons and his duty as king. He knew that time was running out. Before the Pandavas' confidence in King Drupada solidified, they needed to strike. The fate of the Kurus hung precariously in the balance, and the sun was setting over the kingdom of Hastinapura, casting a golden glow over the assembly hall where Duryodhana stood before Karna. The prince's eyes burned with determination as he urged his friend to join him in a final decisive battle against their sworn enemies, the Pandavas. "You know my reasoning is sound, Radha," Duryodhana said, his voice low and persuasive. "We've tried every trick, every subtle ploy, But still the Pandavas remain unvanquished. They were once weak and vulnerable. But now they are grown strong with Krishna by their side. Karna listened intently, his brow furrowed, and thought he knew Duryodhana's words were laced with desperation born of frustration and defeat. For years the prince had sought to eliminate the Pandavas through cunning and stealth, but every attempt had ended in failure. It won't work. This time, Karna said, finally, his voice firm and resolute, "We've tried everything. Robbery, deception, even attempting to drive a wedge between them and Krishna. But it's no use. They are united, Radha, and nothing can break." At Duryodhana's face reddened with anger. But Karna pressed on, his words dripping with conviction. "We must attack them head-on," he said. "With our combined forces, we'll crush the Pandavas and put an end to their claims once and for all. And when Krishna arrives with her Edeva army, we'll be ready. We'll show her that our prowess is not to be underestimated." The assembly hall fell silent as Karna's words hung in the air, weighing heavily on the minds of those present. Dhritarashtra, the blind king, nodded his head in approval, his eyes gleaming with a fire like Radha speaks. "The truth," he said, his voice low and rumbling. "We must consult with our wisest advisors, Bhishma, Drona, Vidura, and yourself, Karna, together. Let us choose the path that will lead to victory." And so the king summoned his most trusted counselors, and they gathered around him in a circle of wisdom and power. The fate of the Pandavas, and indeed of all India, hung precariously in the balance, as these mighty warriors weighed their options and prepared for the greatest battle of their lives. In the midst of a heated debate within the Kuru court, Vidura's words hung in the air like a challenge. Bhishma, the venerable grandfather of the Pandavas, and the Kura stood tall, his eyes locked onto Dhritarashtra. The king had asked for his opinion on the matter at hand, the dispute over the kingdom. Bhishma began to speak, his voice steady and measured. "O Dhritarashtra, a war with the Pandavas is not something I can condone. They are to me as your sons are to you. I have always considered them my own children, equal in love and respect." He paused, surveying the assembly before him. "The Pandavas see this kingdom as their birthright, just as Duryodhana does." Bhishma continued, "If they do not receive it, can we truly say that any of us have a right to claim it? I implore you, O king, to consider the wisdom of dividing the kingdom fairly between them and your sons." His words dripped with sincerity, but also carried a hint of urgency. Dhritarashtra's eyes narrowed as he listened. He knew Bhishma's words were not just those of an old man, but of a wise advisor who had always put the welfare of the Kuru dynasty above his own interests. The king shifted uncomfortably in his seat, weighing his options. His son, Duryodhana, however, seemed unmoved by Bhishma's words. Bhishma pressed on, his voice growing more impassioned. "A good name is a man's greatest strength," he said. "It is what sustains him, even in death. I beg of you, O Duryodhana, do not let your desire for power cloud your judgment. Remember the honor of our family, and act with fairness." His eyes locked onto Duryodhana, as if willing him to understand. As Bhishma spoke, memories flooded his mind. He recalled the day he had heard about the burning of the Pandavas' house by Purakana's treachery. The pain and outrage that had welled up within him still lingered. "Even now I was unable to meet any living creature." For days he revealed, his voice heavy with emotion. Bhishma's gaze turned back to Dhritarashtra, his expression a mixture of sorrow and concern. "The world may not hold Purakana entirely responsible for the fate that befell Kunti's children," he said gently, "but you, O king, are held accountable for their well-being, now their survival and return as a testament to your duty as their protector." Bhishma's words hung in the air like a challenge, leaving Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana to ponder the consequences of their actions, the fate of the kingdom, and that of. In the grand hall of Hastinapura, the wise and venerable Bhishma had just finished speaking his mind to King Dhritarashtra. The king's advisor, Drona, stood up next, his eyes shining with a deep understanding of the situation. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice filled with conviction, "it is our duty as friends, summoned for consultation, to speak what is right and true and conducive to fame. I share Bhishma's opinion on this matter. Let us give the Pandavas their rightful share of the kingdom. This is eternal virtue." Drola's words were like a gentle breeze on a summer day, soothing and calming. He proposed that King Dhritarashtra send a messenger to Drupada carrying a large treasure with the Pandavas, as well as costly presents for both the bridegrooms and the bride. The messenger was to speak of the king's increase in power and dignity arising from this new audience with Drupada's Drola. finished speaking, Karna stood up, his voice like a crackling flame. Bhishma and Drona have been pampered with wealth. That is yours, your majesty, he said, his words dripping with sarcasm. They are also always regarded by you as your trusted friends. What can be more amusing than they giving you advice that is not for your good? Karna's eyes flashed with a hint of malice. Karna went on to tell the story of King Ambivika of Rajagraya, who had been so careless and unaware of his affairs that his minister Mahakarni became the supreme authority in the state. But even with all the power at his disposal, Mahakarni could not acquire the throne, for it was destiny that ruled the kingdom. Karna's words were like a stormy wind, shaking the foundations of the hull. Remembering this story, your majesty, he said, judge of the honesty or otherwise of your advisers, certain also who amongst them are wicked, and who have spoken